White Album 2, the drama romance masterpiece, one of the highest rated visual novels of all time, loved for its emotional, bittersweet storytelling. But what about the first one? Yes, you might be surprised. Why isn't anyone talking about White Album 1, the classic title who kickstarted it all, creating one of Japan's most beloved visual novel franchises? Hi, my name is August, and I'm going to talk about White Album 1 and what exactly happened to this visual novel that not many people see with high remarks. Thanks to Shirobune for providing me a review copy and for showing me a bittersweet story, a tale of love and drama written with grace and elegance, while also being one of the most cumbersome dating sims I've ever experienced. It sure says a lot about a piece of media, given I've dropped it and picked it back up multiple times. Not because the story was horrible, quite the opposite actually. My problem is that it was so unexciting when it wasn't that. That is, the dating simulation portion. Every day you pick characters to visit, and from there you will be given conversation topics to make small talk with the characters. Some are lengthy, others are pretty blunt. Eiji, the genius music producer, will talk his head off about the intricacies of art and music. Meanwhile, Yayoi, the emotionless manager, will just stonewall on anything that isn't related to her shining star, Yuki. You think she would treat her boyfriend nicer, but it sure feels like we're just stealing Yuki away from her. Girl, you spend more time with her than I do. It's nice to see that sense of realism in White Album's conversation. Makes these characters and their feelings more relatable. There's even a touch of nuance in how some conversations are hinting to, or even topically relevant to their route. And then the game decides to lock you out behind a skill level. White Album be like, I'm sorry, you don't have enough points in small talk to talk about how the weather is getting colder. Spending time with a character and choosing the correct choices will grow your affinity with them. Do this enough times and at some point you'll get on their character-specific events. The general idea is to just select that character every time they show up, but there's no formal indication or measure of any kind of your progress. You kinda just hope that listening to them talk about their book collection for long enough is enough of a reason for them to come visit you when you've passed out sick. So I did the smart thing and decided to look up a guide, and I recommend you do so too. Thanks to Nook Gaming for saving hours of my life, but having to do this showed another problem. Since I'm strictly choosing a heroine to hang out with, each day in which I'm not spending time with them is wasted downtime. Talking to non-relevant people only lowers the reading experience because very little actual value is happening between key story events. I could be reassuring Yuki as she struggles with her idol career. Instead, I'm hanging out with Akira, or even worse, fooling around with other women. I can choose to stay at home, but you know it's pretty bad when the game gives you an achievement for spending multiple days at home doing nothing. I think I spent about a month skipping through it because the heroine I was chasing after, the one that isn't our in-game girlfriend, kept running away from me the times I did meet up with her. This visual novel certainly starts off on an awkward foot. Whether you like it or not, choosing a heroine that isn't the main character's girlfriend means actively participating in the infidelity simulator known as the White Album. The mere act of going off to see someone else while Toya has a girlfriend, a rising pop idol, bugs me. While Yuki is going through the most rigorous, transformative stage in her life, Toya is being unfaithful, cheating on her with the other girls, ranging from her best friend, her work rival, to even her manager, while still proclaiming his love for Yuki. And we are complicit in making him do that as the player, which really hurts, because I think Yuki is adorably cute, and frankly, despite wearing a warm smile and having a kind-hearted personality, she needs all the support she can get. But at the same time, I can understand why Toya is doing this. It's difficult for him, too. Perhaps even worse. White Album is about Toya and Yuki, a couple having recently gotten together in college. However, as Yuki begins to get more popular and successful as an idol singer, the distance between the two of them grows, with Toya developing more negative, guilty, and even destructive thoughts. A simple, easy to understand relationship issue, but White Album taps into how complex and emotionally difficult it truly is. At first, everything is fine, as we see Toya being there for Yuki at work, only to slowly realize where he actually stands, even being forcefully shown and told. I found myself baffled at Toya's cowardly attitude. Why doesn't he gather the courage to stand by her side? Where's his confidence? Why doesn't he just tell Yuki's managers off at the most unreasonable requests? But very slowly, as the story continued, I began to understand Toya, his inner thoughts being White Album's exploration of that festering itch of uncertainty and anxiety. Doubting questions begin to appear in his head. Am I good enough for her? Is my presence getting in the way of her dreams? Can I honestly support the rising star that is is Yuki Morikawa. The overall big picture are also critical to keep in mind too. Toya knows full well that this is Yuki's dream, so at a critical moment of her life, is it worth risking her future for those ordinary, present-day, seemingly meaningless acts of love just because he was selfish? Yuki isn't his anymore either. Her beloved fans, the people working behind the scenes, and even the industry is supporting and even placing their hopes on her. So as a result, Toya's simple desires to be with her appear self-centered and childish. This lingering doubt that he has gets to me. Yuki may be an idol, but these troubling doubts can arise in any relationship. And it's even worse if you're someone who's less emotionally put together. White Album may have a simple premise, but its story leads you to the deeper emotional problems the characters have, only further escalated by White Album's prose. And oh boy, I'll talk about that beast later. All of this makes me realize there's no easy answer. This is a complex situation that requires a level of maturity and wisdom, someone that no one at the ripe young age of a young college student has gotten figured out. So how does Toya deal with all of his growing anxiety, pain, and loneliness? The obvious answer clearly, getting into affairs with other women. Now, hanging out with friends is a fine idea, almost feels like the natural answer, but get too close and it'll lead to tragic results. Haruka and Misaki are both friends of Yuki and Toya, in fact very close ones, the former being Toya's childhood playmate and the latter being Yuki's best friend. Haruka may be a tomboy of a few words and seemingly feels out of it the entire time, but she's surprisingly intuitive and insightful when it matters. She will always be there, and that's reassuring to know. I like how Toya and Haruka's relationship is comfortable. I expected nothing less from childhood friends. There's no boundaries holding the two of them back from talking, and even Haruka's past history further solidifies that bond, which only makes it that much more easy to slip up. There isn't any other route that explains that guilty feeling more in detail than Misaki's route. Misaki herself is a pretty considerate person regarding others before herself, so when the act of cheating is committed, she takes it extra personally. What's worse is that the relationship created between Misaki and Toya is extra problematic, since it involves their entire friend group. I generally don't like Toya, simply for his attitude and unfaithfulness. But he also broke the bro code in this route alone, and I find that very detestable. The act of catching someone cheating in White Album is pretty much unavoidable. That said, it seems all in-depth conversation and feelings about the cheating itself just gets glossed over briefly. Very easily resolved to arrive at the route's peaceful conclusion. Not necessarily fully resolved, mind you. It tends to be a recurring issue in just about every heroine route but this one. So we've concluded that dating your friends is a no-go. Then what about just toughening up and braving the loneliness yourself? Well, yes, it's a respectable, honorable path, but really, it's only hiding the pain. So let's start off with the individual who takes the roughest form of that, through anime's most classic stereotype. Speaking very bluntly, Mana's a brat. I can't believe she's about to graduate high school because I see this gremlin as nothing more than a child. And yet, that actually works in her favor. She has a selfish side to her that comes with her age, that and a lot of tsundere sass. She's quick to criticize Toya, jabs bitter retorts to him, and basically whips him around. I question why Toya picked up this irrelevant babysitter job in the first place. A kid's behavior is ultimately influenced by their parents, and I would definitely like to meet the people responsible for a brat like her. And then I realized her situation is exactly what I expected, seeing the bravado of a child wishing to grow up. Over time, as I continued to meet Mana along with Toya, I can say that I enjoyed the interactions and how their weird relationship grew in the limited time they had together. But sometimes, being able to meet someone on a weekly basis can't apply to everyone, especially if they are the crowning apex of the idol industry and your girlfriend's competitive rival. Rina is a very fun and charming individual to watch. In comparison to the kind-hearted, peaceful, ordinary girl next door, Yuki, Rina's charismatic, flirty, and even a bit possessive, and I kinda like that. Rina's Sound of Destiny performance was an absolute showstopper. For that eye wink went after my goddamn heart. She is the strongest idol around. But is she really? Surely her producer, brother, and industry manager are checking up on their talent, right? It doesn't matter, let's just leave it to the stagehand to take care of. We and Toya see all the stage lights and the makeup glamour, but what about the individuals that lie at the core of it all? It's only when Toya gets some idol one-on-one time with Rina that we see how she's holding up, and it's fun getting to know her. The dating sim conversations explore her interests in all of the ordinary affairs and adolescent pleasures Toya and his friends had, things she wasn't able to experience because of her idol career, instead of all the red tape and complications she has to deal with on a daily basis. Which goes to say, if I can give some credibility to Toya, he's pretty observant observant of all the girls and is a fairly decent listener. We see what the world really looks like up there at the top. Rina gives us that perspective, and sometimes it's not as enjoyable as it seems. White Album does address some remarks about the idol industry, but commentary about it is never really the focus, choosing to highlight how it impacts our characters instead. Stuff like adoring fans, personal versus work scheduling issues, and love scandals, obviously. The latter one being a very vicious plot element. And here at White Album, those hit like a truck. All of these elements are used to cause rifts in these relationships, and White Album is pretty cheeky in terms of how it sets up Toya and Rina's tipping point for romantic involvement. But sometimes it's necessary to let those feelings out, to let someone know of your emotions, both pain and passion. So let's talk about the absolute worst way to go about that. Introducing Yuki's manager. Yayoi is stone cold, an iron wall in conversations except when Yuki is involved, and on the off chance we do actually talk to her, it leads to rather unpleasant atmospheres. Sometimes personal career advancements takes priority over love, but Yayoi takes that to another level, utilizing the NTR method at any cost necessary. I don't like her, nor do I like her route, because it takes the extreme way out, Toya succumbing to his weakness. Yes, on paper, it's about a guy falling into the hands of a dominating woman, but it's told in this discomforting way that makes me sick inside. And yet, somehow, it also shows that there may be something worth salvaging from the emptiness. I can acknowledge that. Do I like it? Hell no. So instead, let's talk about something I very much enjoyed, despite it ignoring the cheating aspect of White Album. Yeah, I don't have a transition for this. This is the I love Sayako Kisaragi section of the video. Sayako's presence on screen makes scenes lively and entertaining. She's got that natural boldness and cheekiness to her, while at the same time being only a couple steps away from being a total disaster. A person who has the radiance of a star, but lacks talent, experience, and self-confidence to truly shine on the stage. Seemingly a fake in comparison to the genuine article. Sayako's got this vibe of a pitiful, struggling artist that still continues to dream, and I really dig that. Her vulnerability makes her relatable and compelling as a person. Even the way she lashes out in childish frustration, fear, and anger adds to her own personal charm. And to think this is coming from a heroine who is the largest departure from White Album's infidelity plotline. Yes, certain scenes in her route are invalidated by this fact, but Sayako in her struggling career still touches on White Album's concepts of loneliness. I absolutely love Sayako and Toya's dynamic. She's selfish, nosy, and likes to take charge, while Toya just kinda hangs back, reacting to her whimsical tendencies. However, being entertaining isn't the only thing. I believe Toya in this route embodies the best morally right actions here. He listens, supports, and cheers for them, even when they believe that the world is against them, where they feel like they're all alone. It's being there for them in that moment of need that makes all the difference. Having acknowledged all of the heroines and their routes in the past few minutes of this video shows that Toya isn't the only one with problems. It's a two-way street, and it's that eventual realization from Toya that leads him to choose the right way forward in his relationship with Yuki, to see what she needs the most. Her specific story is a nice and meaningful route for White Album, made even more impactful by its scenes. And the reason why it's so impactful is because of White Album's script. I have constantly complained about my own personal problems with White Album, whether it's the dating sim elements or my own personal moral feelings about cheating. But when White Album wants to hit those high points, it does so with style. The story is told through Toya's perspective, and the language he uses both in dialogue and thoughts is simple but effective. I spoke earlier about how conversations in White Album feel realistic, but it's also crafty in its specific phrasing. Certain dialogue lines have this essence of uncertain foreboding, but they can also come off as metaphors that can be applied to a larger context. Essentially, White Album is able to fuse realistic conversations with relevant story beats, while also hitting those thematic key points. Not in like a methodical checkbox-like way, but with elegance and grace. It's even more noticeable towards the latter half of the story routes. How Toya leaves his ending remarks at certain scenes creates these mini cliffhangers, almost like it's foreshadowing an upcoming ominous event. It could come true, or it could be a hasty feeling in the moment. We and Toya don't know for sure, but that idea itself reinforces that sense of anxiety. Not only is the situation written to be tense through these characters' words and story context, but White Album also likes to describe scenery while all this is happening, to further build the atmosphere and emotions in the moment. All of this together creates very loaded scenes. Like how overwhelmingly erotic the script is in Yaoi's route, while also conveying that dreadful feeling of bleak sadness and pain. Or the regretful, conflicting feelings in Misaki's route after having done the worst possible thing to everyone they know and knowing the consequences that await them. Or even the passionate lashing out at Toya in Sayoko's route from that sense of betrayal from someone she thought understood her, only further highlighting how alone she is. They contain very vivid, moving, and powerful language, presented in an extreme, larger-than-life way, full of soul, essentially. And I haven't even talked about the music yet. These moments have White Album's melancholy songs playing in the background, and it's not quiet in any way. Actually, the opposite, with the melody taking a dominant presence. It's pretty amazing. The namesake song itself, White Album, changes the scene's tone depending on the context. White Album being used when referring to fond memories carries this romantic, nostalgic feeling, while being used when tackling relationship issues carries this dispiriting somberness to it. It's a fantastic and effective song. I could go on further talking about White Album's beautiful CG shots, or how the live 2D animated sprites help further convey the voice work, but I think I've already established my point with White Album's presentation. I may have a bunch of personal faults with White Album, how boring the mundane slice-of-life scenes are, the leftover plot points being dismissed in the overall story, and how the dating sim elements need to be removed entirely. But when it hits those important, meaningful scenes, it does it so well. White Album gets a 3 out of 5 with a seal recommendation. Now, if you enjoyed this, you will most likely want to check out this video over here, or alternatively, click this for a general recommendation. And lastly, after reading this, I am 100% sure White Album 2 will completely destroy me.